I just want to add to that, that I've met many young people, especially who want to come and intern at my newspaper Education Update, but they're attracted to the teaching profession. They get into it, and then they're very disillusioned after 1, 2, or 3 years. And I look at those statistics, and I look at the individuals that I've actually met and spoken to, and they want to do it very, very desperately. What they need and they're not getting, apart from the respect and the money and the business cards, and I agree with all of that, Ann, is they're not getting the mentoring from a master teacher either within their school or a principal. The schools have to operate more as a team approach. We all work on this together. They need better preparation. They need the support. But the mentoring, I think, is a crucial component. And from somebody who's experienced within the school, I think that would make a very big difference.
Thank you.
I think the point about these great kids coming out of schools and then coming out of the educational environment at colleges and then going into the schools, it's very important for first of all the mentoring idea that Pola just talked about, but they also have to, I think in some ways if we could get at what problems teachers are having in schools, and make sure that there's an opportunity to discuss those issues with the principal, say on a weekly basis, so there is a real concentration on where teachers are having difficulties. Most of the time it's methodological. When they first come into a classroom, it's, especially in middle schools, it's a pretty incredible experience. And they need to be able to keep their enthusiasm for teaching with the help of veteran teachers. People that have been there for a while, have had success, and are willing to share that success with the new teachers. I think that is a very, very important aspect of making sure that kids stay in teaching, are happy in it, and look at it as a long-term career.
I hate to do this to you, but when I started teaching, I remember distinctly exactly how much I made. It was $7,200 a year. And in order to make ends meet, I drove a Greyhound bus during the summer, 2 months in the summer. Now here's the real shocker. I made almost as much driving the Greyhound bus for 2 months in the summer as I did teaching. So what does our society value if that's the case? I loved teaching, and I think that's one of the things that we need to instill in people, and that is a love of teaching. And how do you do that? Well, one of the ways you do that is by making the profession truly a profession. As long as we have tenure in existence and we protect incompetent teachers, the hard-working, struggling teacher looks around and sees the incompetence from the inside, not from the outside. Because as we've heard the stories and we've read the newspaper articles about what goes on in certain schools and certain school districts across this country, that's the outside view. It's far, far more troubling from the inside. And you're a young teacher trying your best, and you see someone who shouldn't be in a classroom in a classroom. Again, what's the message that our society is saying? We're willing to trade off the kids in the classroom for peace, in terms of negotiations, in terms of legislation, in terms of the power of unions to influence legislation. And we're willing to do that for that kind of peace, but we pay a price for it. So we can increase the number of teachers, and I agree with everybody on the panel. We have seen in my school a tremendous increase in incredibly well-qualified candidates. And we also know, you made a lot of good points here, but we know from the research that when you look back, as far as an industrial psychologist named Hertzberg years ago talked about what he called hygienic factors, which are things that, if they're not in existence, they demotivate you. So a hygienic factor is salary. And this is an interesting point. If somebody has a concept about how much they should make for their job, and they're not making it, It's a demotivator. So I was demotivated by my $7,200. I had the idea that back then, this is very telling how old I am, at $10,000 would really put me over the top. So what Hertzberg work indicated, if I had been paid $10,000, and I was in agreement that that's really what my work is worth. If you increase the pay beyond that, it does not motivate. What motivates are the internal values that you get out of the job. That's personal satisfaction, and in teaching, a lot of it is competency, feeling competent in the classroom. So we do have to have mentors, we do have to support, we have to evaluate. I'm shocked every time I read that somebody's laid off and they've never had an administrator in their classroom to see what they're doing. What's the message? Just leave me alone, you're in there on your own. These youngsters who come out of college in Teach for America, has gotten a lot of press, very exciting, energetic people. Their attrition rate is horrendous, even though they have the brightest and most energetic people. People are not going in and supporting them in the classroom. So I think to get to the point, I think we can encourage people to stay in teaching by truly making it a profession, by valuing the things that are important, and by not sending mixed messages on lots of different levels, whether it's by legislation or building principles or boards of education. We need to send a consistent message about what's important about teaching, raise it to the status of a profession, and then we'll get people in it who are passionate, energetic, smart, dedicated, and they stay in it so that they can become even better.
I agree about what you said about tenure. I think tenure is a huge disincentive for any, not just teacher, but consider your own professions. If you were in a law firm, and it usually takes 7, 8, 9 years to become a partner and really stable in what you're doing, and if somebody had handed that to you after you were doing basically grunt work for a couple of years, good enough, you've got tenure. I mean, it's an enormous, if you really think about it, it's an enormous insult. And it's a real disincentive for the people in the system. And it's not just the early teachers that this has an effect on it. It's all the way through. I would venture to say it's true on some college campuses as well. I mean, if you're not accomplishing and performing at the level that you've been trained to perform, but you're being given a huge award like lifelong employment, the messaging is terrible. It's a terrible disconnect. Don't learn anymore. Don't do the staff development. Don't put yourself out. You've got to. We are satisfied with what you're doing.
And you get to that issue of merit pay. And
Yeah.
that's another huge controversy.
Terrible
We
message.
have to move to a point where there's some system of reward. Reward for going into the high stakes areas of math and science. Rewards for being in the toughest schools, and some level of feedback, and it's tied very much to the tenure issue.
And the human nature piece, and if nothing is expected of you, nothing is what you generally do. It's no different than what we put out there for our students. You expect nothing, and you probably get very little.